Hello, this is Zeldasmatic, and in this guide I will be showing you how to RNG a Wondercard. If you don't know what a Wondercard is, that is a event Pokemon that you get from either GameStop or a Wi-Fi event that you pick up from the delivery man. Before anything else, make sure that you've calibrated your game to find your timer 0 and your V count and your V frame. If you're not sure what this is, I will put a link to my guide for that in the description. If you have already calibrated successfully, please continue watching. I do apologize for this video being over 20 minutes long. I collaborated with Dookieshed and felt bad cutting too much of his original footage from his first RNG. But before we start, I'm trading him 2 Chattots, which you will also need. Make sure the Chattots know the move Chatter. Also, before you start, you should already have visited GameStop or EB Games near you to pick up your Wondercard. I just want to remind people that RNG is not hacking, and you cannot force the game to give you results that are otherwise impossible. So if you haven't gotten the event Pokemon, you won't be able to RNG it. I would also like to thank Dookieshed for recording this for me, as it forced me to look at RNG with fresh eyes, and hopefully the linear progression of this guide will minimize any confusion you may have. If you don't have a Chattot in your game to breed, you could easily find one or even 2 from an online gaming forum. Basically, that is all you will need to RNG this event Pokemon. You will not need any Master Balls, and this Pokemon cannot be influenced by Synchronize, so Wondercard abuse is relatively simple and shouldn't take you more than a few tries to accomplish. Before I start with the guide, I would like to briefly explain frames and what Chattot's role is. Before, when you calibrated, you were entering the game on the initial PID frame and catching the first Pokemon you encountered. Now, you're using the information you got from calibration to allow the computer to give you a date and time that you will use to find desired results. A seed is a long list of possible Pokemon outcomes, and nearly every action you take in-game changes what frame you're on. The trick to RNG is to advance the frames in a controlled manner that allows you to reliably predict the outcome. Chattot's cry in the summary advances the frame by 1, sort of like turning the page in a book. Each time you hear Chattot's recorded cry in the summary, keep in mind it has to be recorded. It will take on a different pitch. It seems random, but as we know now, nothing in video games is random. We can use the changed pitch of Chattot's cry to successfully verify our seeds and also which frame we're on. So when we use the time finder to find ourselves a seed where a desired Pokemon occurs, it will display to us a list of frames and Pokemon that correspond with those frames. Pay close attention to the frames column in both the time finder and the main windows. Keep in mind that if this is your first time ever using RNG to find a particular outcome, this may sound very confusing, but if you follow this guide step by step, you will figure it out. After all, Dookieshed had never RNG'd before in his life, and he got his target frame within 2 attempts, but I do give myself a little credit. I was helping him the whole way. Before you start RNGing, you should always verify your profile to make sure you're using the correct one. Next, you should click on Time Finder and then 5th Generation Time Finder. The method we are using is called Wondercard, so select that under the method drop-down. Min-max advances is just how long you want to spend advancing your frames. 10 to 100 is a good range to start with. Next, you will want to select the desired IVs and nature for your Pokémon. This one is going to be timid. Some event Pokémon cannot be shiny, like Arceus and Keldeo, but this event is always shiny, so go ahead and select that from the drop-down. I like to widen the search to multiple months to cover as much ground as possible, but it is optional. Next, hit generate and wait for your seed to be found. On your DS, make sure that you have both of the Chatot in your party. Once you have found a usable seed, you can right-click on it and select Copy Seed to Clipboard. Without closing the 5th generation Time Finder window, bring the main window to the front. Change the method in the main window to Wondercard 5th Gen near the bottom. Where it says Seed Hex, right-click and select Paste. Next, you will click Generate. On the right, near the middle, you will see a button that says Calculate Initial PID RNG Frame. Click that and click Generate again. After you hit Generate a second time, the list that comes up will display your frames for that seed. Look closely at the Pitches and Frames column. If you need additional help following with Chatot pitches, I will put a link to that guide in the description. In your Pokemon game, make sure that your Chatots both have a recorded chatter. If you don't know how to make a good recorded chatter, check out my other guide on how to do chatter pitches for RNG. If you haven't already, you should find your timer program in your computer and open it. If for some reason you find your original chatter unsatisfactory, you can always record another one to make it easier for yourself in the future. Pay close attention to where it says frame 92 in that column. That is his target frame for this Pokemon. Once you have a satisfactory recorded chatter, look back at your 5th generation time finder window where you copied your seed and look all the way to the right where it says date/time and key presses. This is relatively straightforward. The date and time is what you will set your DS to, and the key presses is the buttons you will hold while the game is booting up. Save your game standing directly in front of the delivery man facing him. Once your game is saved, you can go into your DS time and date settings. Dookieshed is on a 3DS, so he has to subtract 8 seconds from the final seconds on the date and time entry in the RNG Reporter. Once he sets the date and time to the correct date as listed in RNG Reporter, when he clicks OK to set the time, he will start the timer on his computer to count down the 40 seconds to 12:29:52. As soon as he clicks OK on his DS, he will also hit spacebar on his computer to sync his DS to an external timer. Here he is waiting the 44 seconds before he presses A to start his game. He also has a key press, which means he will be holding right on his D-pad until he sees the Game Freak cinematic. Then he will continue and say no to C-Gear. As soon as he enters the game, he will begin spamming X to open his Pokémon menu and start advancing his frames with Chatot. Dookieshed will begin to advance through the menu and say no to sea gear. As soon as he enters the game, he will open his Pokémon menu and select Chatot Summary. I'm not going to voice over the next part so that you can listen to the Chatot's cries and try to match them up with the list on the left. That sounded low. That sounded high. That sounded low. That sounded to about the same. So at this point we're fairly certain that he's hit his seed, so he can go ahead and advance until the one right before his target. His target frame is 92. That was the last chatter that he was going to do. He has stopped one before his target frame at 91. His target frame is 92. Next, he's going to exit out of his Pokemon menu quickly by pressing X and then immediately pick up the Pokemon from the delivery man. Keep in mind that timing is not as important while you're in-game. Time, as in seconds, only matters when you're first booting up the game. Now, while you're in your Pokemon menus, the game is essentially paused and nothing should change while you're listening to Chatot. However, once you leave the menus, turning NPCs in the area can affect your frames, so make sure the time between closing your menu and picking up the Pokemon is as short as possible. So you've just picked up your Dialga, and the first thing you want to do is verify its stats using an IV calculator. It is level 100, so using an IV calculator should be pretty accurate. If you find that for some reason this isn't the Pokemon you were expecting, you should not save. All you need to do is shut off your DS and go back to the settings and change the time again. Patience and perseverance is key with RNG, so keeping a level head will always do you justice. Also, feel free to ask me for help anytime. This particular Dialga that he just got was exactly what he was looking for, timid with 31 IVs across the board. Stay tuned as he takes it to the subway to have it checked in-game. that wraps up this video. As always, thanks for watching. Please leave me comments and questions. I will always try to get back to you in a timely manner. Special thanks to Dookieshed for helping me with the footage, and to Slash Molder and the rest of the RNG Reporter team for making this possible.